Alright, so in this lesson we're going to talk about multiplying decimals. Multiplying decimals is not terribly different from multiplying integers or multiplying whole numbers. The difference comes into play when we have to find out where the decimal point goes at the end of the problem. But through this lesson I'm also going to review how to multiply whole numbers as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So step one. And you'll see here I'm going to have the steps on the side and then an example problem on the side as well. And I've really tried to break this down as much as I possibly can for you. So step one, we are going to multiply as usual and ignore the decimal points. So here I have 1.23 times 3.4. Okay, so I'm going to do 4 times 3, which is 12. So I'm going to carry the 1 and write the 2 down here. 4 times 2, which is 8, plus 1, which is 9. So here's my 9. And then 4 times 1, which is 4. Okay? It's at this point, I kind of like to cross out the 4 because I know I'm done with it. Okay? Now, when I move on to start to multiply the 3, okay, you need to remember to put a 0 as a placeholder right here under that under the 2, okay? Because we always start one place over. So then 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 3 is 1. We're going to draw a line and add them all up. 2 plus 0 is 2, 9 plus 9 is 18, so here's the 8, and I'm going to carry the 1. 6 plus 4 is 10, plus 1 is 11, so I'm going to carry the 1, and here's the 1 from the 11. And then 1 plus 3 is 4. So just focus on the 4, 1, 8, and 2, and I've completed step 1. Step 2, count the total number of digits after, meaning to the right of, the decimals in the numbers being multiplied. So for this, I'm going to go back up to the original problem up here, and I'm going to sort of erase the marks that I made so you can see better. And what I've done is I've circled for you. So how many numbers in the original problem are after the decimal point? So here's the decimal point. Here's the decimal point. How many numbers are after the decimal point? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've counted. Now step 3. Okay, put your pencil at the end of your answer and draw a decimal point. Okay, so now I go down to my answer and I'm going to draw a decimal point at the end of my answer. Okay, step 4. Bump your decimal point to the left as many times as you counted in step 2. So in step 2, I counted that I was 3 numbers after the decimal point. So now I'm going to bump it to the left once, twice, 3 times. That is the final resting place of the decimal point. So my final answer is 4.182. All right, let's go ahead and practice. Now, this says 0.2 times 0.61. With multiplication, you can write this out as 0.2 times 0.61, like this, or you can write it out as 0.61 times 0.2. Now, either way is acceptable. I personally like to write it out this way because I like the number with the small or with the least amount of digits on the bottom because it's less rows of numbers for me to add up at the end. So that's the way I'm going to do it, but you can also do it this way. It's perfectly acceptable. Okay, but I like to put the number with the most digits on the top. Okay, so 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 6 is 12. So I'm going to carry the 1 and put the 2 right here. 2 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. Now I'm going to cross out the 2 because I'm done with it, and I'm going to put 0 as a placeholder right there. 0 times 1 is 0. 0 times 6 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. And some of you may be asking, are all those zeros really necessary? Yes, they are, because at the end, when I go to move the decimal point back, depending on how many times I move it back, those zeros may become very, very important. So now I'm going to add all these numbers up. 2 plus 0 is 2. 2 plus 0 is 2, 1 plus 0 is 1, and 0 plus 0 is 0. Now I need to go back up to my original problem and count how many numbers are after the decimal. 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to go to my answer and I'm going to start here. 1, 2, and 3. So my final answer is 0.122. All right, next problem, 4 times 0.17. Remember, you can stack those on top of each other any way you want because with multiplication, it doesn't matter which order they're in. I like to put the 0.17 on top because it allows me to only have one row of multiplication then because there's only a 4 here, but you can do it with the 4 on top as well. But for me, this is easier. Okay, so I'm going to multiply. 4 times 7 is 28. So carry the 2, put the 8. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 is 6. 4 times 0 is 0. Okay, and that's it. Now, how many numbers are after the decimal point? There's no decimal here, so that's none. And then there's 1 and 2 right here. So I'm going to start over here and I'm going to go 1 and 2. And my decimal is going to go right there. So my final answer is 0.68. Okay, 0.05 times 0.8. Okay, I'm going to put the 0.05 on top because it has the most digits. Again, it does not matter. You can do it any way you choose, but that makes it easier for me. It's less confusing for me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and multiply. 8 times 5 is 40, so I'm going to carry the 4, write the 0 on the bottom. 8 times 0 is 0, plus 4 is 4. 8 times 0 is 0. Now I'm going to cross out the 8 and write a 0 as a placeholder here. 0 times 5 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0. And now I'm going to add them all up. 0 plus 0 is 0, 4 plus 0 is 4, 0 plus 0 is 0, and 0 plus 0 is 0. Now, go back up to my original problem and how many numbers are after the decimal? 1, 2, and 3. Now, let me show you. Here's where those zeros are important. Start here. 1, 2, 3. See, if we didn't have all those zeros, we wouldn't have anywhere to move the decimal. So our final answer is 0.4, oops, I'm sorry. I messed that up. I missed a 0. It's 0.040. Now, another way that you can write it is this 0 at the end is not really necessary. So you can also, and I messed it up again, you can also write it as 0.04. Okay? Either is acceptable. This 0 at the end is not really necessary, so you can write it either way is acceptable. All right, let's take a look at this one. Okay, 3.25 times 6.8. Again, I'm going to do the 3.25 on the top because it has the most digits, but you can do it in either order that you choose. 3.25 times 6.8. And it is not necessary, I should have said this in the beginning, but it is not at all necessary to line up the decimal points when you multiply. That is for adding and subtracting only. The point of the the point of the decimal points, or the reason for the decimal points in multiplication, comes at the very end when you count them up and move them over. Okay, so 8 times 5 is 40. We're going to carry the 4, write the 0 at the bottom. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 4 is 20. Carry the 2, write the 0 at the bottom. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 2 is 26. I'm going to cross out the 8 because I'm done with it, put a 0 as a placeholder. 6 times 5 is 30, so I'm going to carry the 3, put the 0 at the bottom. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. I'm going to carry the 1, put the 5 at the bottom. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19, and I'm going to put the whole 19 at the bottom. and I'm going to add it up. 0 plus 0 is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0, 6 plus 5 is 11, carry the 1, 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 9 is 12, carry the 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. How many numbers are after the decimal? 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to start from the back. 1, 2, and 3. So my answer here is 22.100, or remember what I told you in the last problem, you can drop those zeros from the end and just write 22.1. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to evaluate some variables again. Remember I showed you variables when we did adding and subtracting. A variable is when I put a letter, well, a variable is another name for a letter in math, and we're going to get to variables later on in the school year, but I'm going to start to introduce them to you now. But if you think back to our first unit, what happens when you have two numbers next door to each other? That shows multiplication. And so all you're going to do is, this is 3 times n, okay? And what is n? Well, n is right here, okay? So what is 3 times, oops. So what is 3 times 4.047? Okay, so let's go ahead and multiply that out. I'm going to put the 4.047 on the top because I like to do that when I have more digits. Times 3. 3 times 7 is 21, carry the 2. 3 times 4 is 12, plus 2 is 14, carry the 1. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. 3 times 4 is 12. How many numbers are after the decimal point in the original problem? There's no numbers here after the decimal, and then there's 1, 2, 3 numbers there. So I'm going to start from the end, and I'm going to go 1, 2, and 3. So my final answer is 12.141. All right, you go ahead and try these two on your own. All right, if you're not done, go ahead and hit pause, and then if you are done, we can go ahead and go over it. So for number 1, you should have gotten 0.009. There were 1, 2, 3 numbers after the decimal, so your final answer should have 1, 2, 3 numbers after the decimal. For number 2, you should have gotten 26.46. There were 1, 2 numbers after the decimal, and so you should have 2 numbers after the decimal there as well. If you were off in any of your numbers, please double check your math with mine. All right, let's go ahead and try these two examples as well. Remember, for number 4 here, All you're doing is trying to figure out what this variable n stands for, and hint, 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 it tells you right there, and then you're going to multiply them together, okay? All right, if you're not done, go ahead and hit pause, and if you are done, we can go ahead and go over it. So for number 3, you should have gotten 1.824, and since there are 1, 2, 3 numbers after the decimal in the original problem, you should have 1, 2, 3 numbers after the decimal here. If you're off by a couple numbers or by a lot of numbers, please make sure you go back and double check your multiplication and your addition. For number 4, your problem should have been set up as 6.23 times 6 or 6 times 6.23, and you should have gotten 37.38. Just as a quick reminder before the lesson is over, I do want to show you something else that you will encounter. If you have the problem, for example, 6.25 times 3.81, I do want to show you something very important here. So as I set this up, 6.25 times 3.81, because of the way that I solved the problems in the notes, I made it a lot easier so that you don't encounter this too often, but when you do, I want to show you how you do it. So 1 times 5 is 5, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 6 is 6. So we're done with the 1, and we know that we put a placeholder 0 there, okay? Then we do 8 times 5 is 40, so we carry the 4, put a 0 here. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 4 is 20, so I carry the 2, put a 0 here. And then 8 times 6 is 48, plus 2 is 50. So I put a 50 here. Okay, now this is where it's important. So now that I'm going to move on to the 3, instead of putting just one placeholder here, I actually put 2 placeholders here. And if there was another number after the 3, I would put 3 placeholders here, and then 4 placeholders, and so on and so forth. And so that's just very important to know if you encounter multiple digits for the second number line of your problem. I didn't explain that correctly, but if you have more than 2 digits in this line of your problem, you need to know how many placeholders to put down here. And that's why I always put my smallest, or the number with the fewest amount of digits down here, so that I don't have to worry about multiple placeholders. But let's go ahead and finish out this problem. So 3 times 5 is 15. We're going to carry the 1, put the 5. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7, and then 3 times 6 is 18. And then we're going to add this all up. So 5 plus 0 is 5, 2 plus 0 is 2. 6 plus 0 plus 5 is 11, so we're going to carry the 1, put the 1 here. 1 plus 0 plus 7 is 8. 5 plus 8 is going to be 13, and then 1 plus 1 is 2. Going back up to our original problem, how many numbers after the decimal? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to start here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So our final answer is 23.8125. But I did want to show you that, and it is important to write down as another example. Other than that, that is the end of the multiplication lesson. We will have tons of practice, but be sure to ask me any questions you have in class.